a sound that'll put a smile on the face of even the grumpiest of souls. We're of course driving Audi's fabulous R8. V10 onlys now, and this one is a little gem because it is the rear wheel drive version. And that noise on the point is a noise that we're sadly gonna miss in the future as we look towards this electrification of all models. You can already see the change happening in the industry. The likes of Ferrari, McLaren downsizing to twin turbo V6s. And Audi's really one of the last few, at least in that everyday supercar bracket, and of the cars that mere mortals can look towards eventually buying rather than these £1 million plus limited run models. It's the last of those sort of true great supercars, I think, because for me, as a petrol head, a lot of the driving experience comes down to the noise that something produces, and whether that's a huge turbocharged 4-cylinder 2-litre job, or whether that's a highly strung Italian thoroughbred, or a master of engineering in a V10 from Audi. It is a bit quieter. That is one of my gripes with this 2022 model. The OPF filters and regulations and everything else that's come in has meant that the sound has suffered, sadly, and it is quieter than ever. It's still aural, don't get me wrong, it's still a beautiful tone and a beautiful sound, but the pitch has dropped slightly. It's quite so high at the top end, but it still sounds absolutely fantastic, and up there with one of the greatest engines on sale today, greatest sounding engines for sure. But it is a thirsty old girl, as you can imagine, and the reason why I bring that up so early is because I want to link that to this engine and of course the exhaust and the sound and everything that goes with it. Now, for some reason, I'm putting it down to regulations, not Audi's fault, but you cannot drive this car with the valves open below 5,000 RPM, which means in order to enjoy the sounds and everything that goes with it without it being muted, you've got to climb through the rev range at every opportunity. You're going to want to behind the wheel, trust me, but it's something that I think is ruining the sort of that sports car, supercar level of vehicle, is the fact that you can't enjoy the sounds, you can't enjoy your vehicle to its potential without having to drive at silly speeds, breaking the speed limit and potentially putting yourself at risk. There aren't any adaptive suspension on this vehicle in the rear-wheel drive car, unfortunately, but the suspension does do a good job of softening off bumps and making the car feel planted pretty much all the time. So it's not too much of an issue, but when you're on a back road like this, it can feel a little bit fidgety. Now, if we cycle back through the drive modes, as I mentioned, we were just in auto comfort sort of area. We've got dynamic, and then we've got individual, where you can tailor the engine sound, tailor the gear changes, speed and things like that. You can alter certain things. We're going to go back into just manual mode now, so we can just enjoy that engine a little bit more. And I must admit, just while we mentioned the gearbox, I actually think it's better to drive this in manual mode, especially on a back row when you just want to enjoy the different sounds that come with it, because I find in auto it wants to hold on to gears a little bit too long. It wants to then, when you're not on sort of 50% throttle, or say 35 to 50% throttle, it wants to then not change down when you want to get into a corner. So it's nice just to knock it back into the manual mode. You can flick through the paddles and go about the rev range that way. As I said, it always feels beautifully planted, even on these quite bumpy roads. And it is all about the engine, let's be honest, because when you've got that gorgeous 5.2 litre engine just sat behind you in the mid-engine configuration, it almost feels like it's part of the cockpit. Now again, I mentioned it's quieted down, and earlier R8 models did sound better, but I'm sure we can change that with an aftermarket exhaust, no problem. There are a few other issues I have. Now, on the whole, the cabin I find is beautiful. It's clutter-free, it's easy to use. It takes a couple of days to get used to everything being in the sort of digital cockpit area on the instrument panel. But you can select everything you want through the menus on the selector rotary sort of arm here. But the bit that I think lets this car down are these paddles on the steering wheel, because unlike its brother or its counterpart in Lamborghini in the Huracan, which, you know, they are the same car, that comes with beautiful sort of a metal plated or carbon optioned gear selector, which means it just feels so much more premium. It feels nicer. This one feels the same as you get in your TT, the same as you get in your A3 and things like that. It doesn't scream premium. It's plastic at the end of the day. It's not what you expect to find in a £134,000 entry-level supercar, that's for sure. I'll tell you what, there's a really nice point on where the valves open and close, where you can just hold it, and it gives you a real burst of acceleration as you punch through, and it revs all the way out to 8,500 RPM. It is ferociously fast. It can get you into some serious trouble, and it can deliver on serious thrills as well, as you can probably tell from my face. Having to focus a little bit more in this section, as it is a touch bumpy around here, but the stability on the chassis is phenomenal. Even on, like there, where mid-corner there's a crest that sort of bumps you up, it feels really nicely balanced, perhaps slightly more balanced than the Quattro version. And the stability control, yeah, just kicking in slightly there on the corner when we're just on sort of 50% throttle in that sort of mid to top end range, 6,000 RPM. And it sounds phenomenal coming through this tree section here. Oh, and the down changes, there it is. One thing I will mention, although I didn't do it at that point there, I have noticed that the gearbox does stop you from snatching down on some gear changes when you know you've still got enough rev still, and it feels like it's protecting itself, but also at the same time it's sort of doing too good of a job, and I really want to just hear those revs pull up as I go down into sort of first gear. So is it better than the Quattro? I would buy the Quattro, even though it's sort of 15-20 grand more expensive. I feel the usability all year round is something that I would miss, because on rainy days I wouldn't be snatching the keys to get behind the wheel of this if it was my car. But the engine makes me want to grab the keys at every opportunity and hop behind the wheel and go for a drive. Yeah, it's a special engine.